Welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us late on a Saturday evening. Got some big news for those of you who are New York Mets fans. You got yet another starting pitcher. That starting rotation is looking well-rounded right now. They start, of course, Max Scherzer at the top. They bring in Justin Verlander, they brought in Jose Quintana, they had Carlos Carrasco, and now they get their final starter in that rotation by bringing in Kodai Senga. There was a lot of rumors today that he would ultimately make his decision. The Padres were right in there, along with a number of other teams, the Giants, the Cubs, etc. But Kodai Senga ends up deciding to go to the Queens and play for the New York Mets. He probably slides in as their number 3 starter behind Scherzer and Verlander, but ahead of Quintana. Great job by the New York Mets being able to get this job done. I know it's late for you guys here at 10:30, but here at the Upside, we're not going to stop giving you guys the news whenever it actually happens. The numbers for Kodai Senga: 5 years, $75 million. Just as Bryce points out here, their payroll is approaching $350 million, maybe a little bit over that at this point, and they still have more holes to fill on that roster. That tax bill is going to be exorbitant. This is by far the richest, the most expensive payroll to ever open the season, if it stays this way as of right now. Of course, we still expect them to add 1 or 2 pieces out there in the bullpen. We still expect them to try to add some other pieces, as a third baseman or a DH, some bench pieces. They could even improve catcher. The Mets are not done. Just because they signed Kodai Senga does not mean they're just going to stop and say, all right, we got it done. We got our rotation back. There's still a lot of things that they could do, but thank you guys for joining us tonight. If you're joining us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and the like. It really does help us out. Jose, oh, I saw your comment just we were coming on live anyway. Oh boy, Michael, I'm glad to see you. If you see Mike, that means we have some breaking news. Yes, it does. Anytime we see some big news, any type of news like this, of this magnitude, you're going to see me live for you guys. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Red Sox are done, LOL. Last in the AL East, 100%. I agree. So what happens if you go crazy like this and go over the payroll this much? Well, right now it's just going to be bigger and bigger and bigger tax bills. Other than that, there's really nothing to stop an owner from doing something like this. That's why the Players Association have argued for years not to have a salary cap, because when you get an owner that's this zealous to be able to, build a championship team, is willing to spend the money to pay the tax, then you can get those bigger contracts. The New York Mets roster right now is really, really, really bloated with really high-paying contracts right now. Senga's contract is a little bit surprising to me, because the reason why I think it's surprising though is because this is what I thought it would be at the beginning of the offseason. There was plenty of headlines out there that he had 5-6-year deals on the table worth over $20 million a year. This deal, though, is significantly beneath that. I wonder if he saw New York as a place where he wanted to be, and we'll see where the other offers ended up. But it sounded like he had multiple offers over $20 million, and I'm a little bit surprised to see him sign for so little with the New York Mets. But we'll see what ends up happening here. You're saying Carlos Rodon to the Yankees is confirmed. Is that hopeful thought, Michael? Or is that done? I don't see anything with Carlos Rodon yet, but I do see that the Yankees will probably end up with Rodon. They're pushing really hard for him right now. There was some rumors that they were pushing for Carlos Correa last night, even on early this morning anyway. But it seems like their attention is fully focused on Carlos Rodon right now. Giants are going to have to fall out, or go for whoever's left, I should say. And maybe going after Chris Bassett would be their option. Padres, I imagine, are going to be right there as well. Hopeful, not confirmed. Okay, thank you, Bryce. But New York Mets fans, congratulations. Your rotation looks very solid, headed up by Scherzer and Verlander. Senga's a great number 3, at least we hope he is. He's never pitched in Major League Baseball, but by all accounts, he seems like he should fit into that role very nicely. Then, of course, their number 4 spot, they brought in Quintana. Had a great resurgent year last year with the Pirates and then the Cardinals. And then Carrasco is your number 5, and they still have a little bit of depth now at that 6, 7, 8 spot if they need to have somebody fill in for an injury. Maybe they could still bring in another long man in that bullpen, somebody who can do more than just 1 or 2 spot starts, but can start for you for a month at a time, and you don't worry about that rotation spot in the when that turn comes around. But the Mets look very good with that rotation. I imagine they're going to try to turn their attention towards the bullpen and possibly a third base DH option. But thank you guys for joining us. As a Yankee fan, I need Rodon tomorrow. I'm getting impatient watching Steve Cohen carry out like a baby around New York. Well, I mean, Hal did fantastic. He got the job done, bringing in the number 1 free agent pretty much ever in Major League Baseball by keeping Aaron Judge there in New York. Hold on, I just got a whole slew of updates. Hold up. Okay. Sorry, I just saw a Twitter page with the Texas Rangers and Carlos Rodon, and it said time to come home, and I was like, uh-oh, let me see what this is. And I thought maybe the Texas Rangers had bowed in or had made another big step into that starting pitcher market, but no, it was just a just a tweet anyway. Whew, had me worried there for a second, for y'all Yankees fans. But no, Rodon is not signed as of yet. But the New York Mets do get their man. They improved that rotation. Nice work there by Steve Cohen. I wonder how much Billy Epler is really having to do with this, and I wonder how much of a driving force Steve Cohen really is in these negotiations. That's something after this era of the Mets baseball is over, I would love to hear the backstory on as to how these things kind of happen. But right now, New York Mets baseball is looking very good. But again, it could still be better. So I expect Steve Cohen to continue to try to add pieces. And remember, they can still add even more at the trade deadline, so things are not done yet. Then, of course, maybe next year they go really crazy and try to go after Shohei. At this point, if you're a New York Mets fan, there's literally nobody on the market that you're not out of the sweepstakes for just because of money. To be honest, I need the Yankees to sign Rodon and Correa and then dump half of Donaldson's salary. Half of Donaldson's salary is actually feasible. They could probably spin off maybe a top 10 and a top 20 prospect and be able to get that amount saved. And then as far as signing Rodon and Correa, they could probably sign one of the two right now, just the way their roster is constructed. Bringing in both would be a little bit hairy, I think. But if they were to spin off that money for Donaldson, maybe they could still be able to afford that going forward. They do have a lot of big contracts to worry about, though. Not just Donaldson, but Hicks, LeMahieu, Stanton. They got some big money to worry about. But you guys rate the deal for me. 5 years, $75 million for the Mets. As far as just the value of the deal, that's pretty much in line with what I thought it would be originally. I thought it'd be significantly higher, though, as we heard reports coming out that it was going to be over $20 million. So for just the contract, 5 years, $75 million, $15 million AAV, I give the Mets an A+ on that one. As far as where he lands, again an A+ for the Mets on that one. Now for Senga on that side of the argument, I can clearly see why he wanted to go there, be able to compete, all those kinds of things. Maybe he thought he just didn't fit with the New York or with the San Francisco Giants and their timeline. Maybe he learned something from Shohei Ohtani, not taking, what could be a great situation and instead going into a proven playoff situation. And maybe that was part of the argument there. $360 million to Brendan Nimmo, Verlander, Senga, Quintana, Robertson. Payroll is $345 million with penalties. Current payroll $421. Yep, it's fantastic. Fantastic amounts of money. Just thinking about that kind of money just makes you go, how many teams could he actually afford it already? Was it the Tampa Bay Rays had a $120 million payroll last year, and that was up for them? The Cleveland Guardians had a $90 million payroll. The Mets now have 4 times that. I do believe it is a steal, though, Bryce. I agree. It was reported they are getting ready to make Rodon an offer. Well, they need to get that thing done. In my estimation, Yankees fans are not going to be, silent just because they brought in Aaron Judge. They still need to improve that team. After all, they did make it to the ALCS. They're going to have to solve some of their issues. We put out a video earlier this morning anyway. You guys can check that out here on YouTube anyway, about whether or not they should go for a guy like Rodon or spend their money on Correa, whether they should go through the trade market for Pablo Lopez, maybe go after the Milwaukee Brewers starting pitching, Corbin Burns, Brendan Woodruff. There's a lot of options out there for the Yankees, but for me, they have to lock up Carlos Rodon, in my opinion. If they do not, that rotation is not going to be able to get them to a World Series. That's all I'm going to say. I think they have to improve that rotation one way or another, and I think they will. I just wonder if they shortchange it like they did last year. If they add 1 starter but not 2. If they decide to go the back end of the rotation, like Wade Miley, Drew Smyly, Michael Wacha, pieces like that, to improve the rotation, as opposed to a proven number 2 or a proven number 3 type starter. Maybe they turn towards Chris Bassett now that he doesn't have a home in the Mets and try to get something done there. Both Bassett and Rodon would constitute significant improvements for that Yankees rotation. It's Reynolds or nothing. Okay. There we go. It was also reported the Yankees are talking to Twins and D-backs about outfield trades, Twins being Max Kepler. Kepler's been in the news for the better part of 2 years now as far as the trade market. His numbers really never really developed like we all thought they would, though, but there's still significant interest out there. The D-backs have a plethora of outfielders for you to choose from. That one I think has more steam than, say, the talks for the Twins for Kepler. That NL East division is going to be really good. Yes, it is. But as far as the Reynolds or nothing, I think that the Brian Reynolds situation might take a little bit more time. We saw the signing of Kevin Kiermaier to the Toronto Blue Jays, but I don't think that solves their problem as far as a left-handed hitting outfielder. I think Brian Reynolds is, by all accounts, a better player, and so maybe they go that route. They're so desperate they Venmoed Rodon and he paid everybody their money back. Twins and D-backs outfielders are below average. I'm not sure about that with the D-backs. A lot of them are young, and I think they're on the cusp of becoming something. We were talking about Jake McCarthy the other day, but he's somebody who could be traded because they have so many good young outfielders that are coming. Hal prefers Benny over Reynolds. Maybe, but I'm not sure he gets the deal done with Benintendi because I think he's going to try to solve that rotation first. At least that's what I would do. They are in on both, Michael, but they don't prefer one or the other. They're said to be in on Reynolds since the last deadline. Very true. I just don't think they're going to be willing to go the Reynolds route, especially if they're trying to trim salary by trading away at Donaldson or something like that. Now, maybe going the other way, Donaldson could go to the Pirates if they're trying to spin off his contract. I don't think he plays a game with the Pirates, and they just eat the contract and cut him and send him into free agency. But maybe they end up trying to send out money that way as part of the Reynolds deal. But again, you don't want to hinder the value of a Reynolds by eating money. But we'll see how it gets done. Rodon has first priority. Get it done now, especially with Senga off the board. I think the market is pretty much at a peak right now for Rodon. I don't see it getting much higher than it is right now. So maybe we could see Rodon, sign here by the end of the weekend. But it's midnight now on the East Coast. Mets with yet another big splashy headline, big signing, pushing the Yankees off the front page. But they still have some work to do. Isn't it crazy how Senga got less than Kenley Jansen, who the Red Sox spent more on? Yes, it is. But Kenley Jansen only got a 2-year commitment, and it's reasonably fair deal. I mean, he's starting to fall back on the backside of his career, but he's still an effective closer. In some respects, he was actually more consistent last year. Not necessarily the high peaks that we've seen from his performance in the past, but he was a lot more consistent with the Braves than he had been in recent memory with the Dodgers. But the Red Sox spending on that bullpen, spending on Yoshida, way more than they should have, honestly. And the Red Sox are in a world of hurt because they spent that money on Yoshida, didn't give it to Xander Bogaerts, and now they don't have Xander Bogaerts. That team is probably going to be heading towards a rebuild sometime in the next year or two. Kyle Bloom, I expect to probably be fired by the end of next season. Things have just not gone well there. He's running that team into the ground, and ever since he took over, it's been nothing but get rid of good player, get rid of good player, get rid of good player, sign player to expensive contract, it not work out, injuries take over the team, and the Red Sox continue to toil. But you guys let us know, what do you think Rodon officially gets now that we've seen starting pitcher prices come down just a hair with this signing? 5 at 75 is about what we expected at the beginning of the offseason, whereas we saw the contract offers really start to get up there. There was reports out there Senga, again, was getting over $20 million offers per year and ends up opting for the Mets. The DeGrom money, the Verlander money out there was really good. You look at Taijuan Walker, who got more money in his deal per year anyway than Senga gets, and Senga is considered to be a better pitcher. Sure, he hasn't thrown in the majors, but still pretty hefty. Yankees are going to counter. Hal has made a promise to Judge that he would make moves if Judge were to re-sign with the Yankees. Yes, he did. He went out and made the signing for Anthony Rizzo before he even signed. I do like that prediction around 6-180, 6-185 though, Bryce. That sounds about right, but I think there's going to be a 7th year, and that's how I think it's going to get over that $200 million mark. It's going to get that high, I think. I think we're going to see probably 7 at 200, 7 at 205. If he really wants that $30 million AAV and the 7 years, maybe they stretch it to 8 and lower that lower that contract just a little bit. But teams seem to be willing to push the years out a little bit if it lowers the AAV. We'll see how it goes. Pirates, Rays, and Orioles currently have a combined payroll of $72 million. Cohen is paying $76 million in luxury tax. Padres do need a starting pitcher. Welcome back, Mark. Appreciate you joining us late on a Saturday evening. Maybe this means Chris Bassett is the starting pitcher they really want to bring in now that Senga is going to the Mets. Mets, I would imagine, are not going to compete for Chris Bassett. Maybe the Yankees step out there now knowing that Bassett does not have a home in New York. Rangers are said to still have about $20+ million to spend this offseason. I think there's still a chance they could add another starting pitcher. I don't think there's a path. There is a path for them to add a starting pitcher, I guess is the best way I'm trying to say it anyway. But I still think they need to add left field and closer. But they're still rumored to be in on starting pitchers that are out there. Carlos Rodon, they still seem to keep tabs on his market. Not saying they'll go $30 million a year, but they're at least keeping their options open for starting pitching. Padres can get Eovaldi or Manaea. Manaea, I think, to the lesser extent, won't cost you as much. I think he's probably destined to a number 4, number 5 starter roles on a good team. Eovaldi probably goes to a younger team, maybe even back to the Red Sox, who just need some productive innings out of that rotation. Try to give him a stopgap year anyway. Try to see if they can keep Devers at through the next offseason anyway. In case you guys haven't been paying attention, the free agents for next season are going to be very good as well. There's a lot more options, a little bit deeper class. Eovaldi to the Rangers, no. The only reason being is because there's a qualifying offer attached to him, and they already have very similar starters in that staff to Eovaldi, and I think that would be more of a redundancy for them. I think the only way they go for a starter is if they find, say, an opportunity to put Jake Odorizzi as the long man in the bullpen, or go to a 6-man rotation to make sure their starting pitchers who have health concerns stay healthy through the entire year, or getting another innings eater type like a Jake Eovaldi or Jake Odorizzi in that lineup as well. But they are still talking to the top end guys like Rodon. They are talking about possibly still trading for some starting pitching. But their main priority, I'd imagine, right now is still solving that left field spot, which is still the worst spot in all of baseball as far as any position is concerned on the diamond anywhere. Negotiating with Boris takes a while, but with Senga signed, don't be surprised if Rodon signs the next few days. Very true. Boris does like to work one client at a time. Usually once he gets done with one, he turns the page and moves quickly with the next one. So kind of keep your eyes peeled if we see something happen. But I do like Eovaldi as well, but I just don't think he's a fit on the Rangers. I think more teams like the Orioles make a lot of sense, give him a number 2, 3 type starter since they didn't end up with Jameson Taillon. The Pittsburgh Pirates make a little bit of sense as well. I wonder about the money, though, as far as a commitment there. I'm not sure they'll have the money that they're wanting to give him, plus, again, draft pick compensation, etc. Dodgers are needing some depth in that rotation. Now with the top guys off the board except for Rodon, maybe they go the route of Eovaldi to give him some innings out of that rotation. Giants still have a bucket full of money. Maybe they'll go that route as well. Cubs could use another starting pitcher. They're asking Jameson Taillon to be a number 2 starting pitcher this year. That's way too high for him to be in a rotation. They need to add some more depth to that rotation to allow those starting pitchers to be a little bit more comfortable. That's why I thought Rodon would have been a great piece there. Gets them a number 1 and allows them to slide the other guys down a spot and makes that rotation a lot better overall. But maybe Eovaldi could go there. But his market, I thought, was engineered essentially to go to the Baltimore Orioles. But we'll see if he ends up going there. Got about 22 of you guys in here right now. Don't be afraid. Say hello. Join us. Hit that like and subscribe. Really appreciate you guys joining us here late on a Saturday evening. Just starting to wind down with the family anyway. And lo and behold, Andy Martino of I want to say SNY. I can't remember where he's from anyway, but Martino NYC, or at Martino NYC on Twitter was his handle. I saw that pop up on the Fox Sports notification. And then the sports world basically went quiet on it. Like, nobody talked about the deal for like 10 minutes. And so I'm like, is this a legit thing? Is this just a rumor? And then we finally start getting one, or MLB trade rumors picks up the news, and then we finally get the snowball effect, the Rosenthals, everybody else. But I had already put out that video by then, so the cart was already out, and looks like everything was indeed done for Kodai Senga. Looks like the report that we had yesterday that he was indeed going to be signing with the team today was actually accurate. So I can't remember who ended up giving that information to us yesterday. I don't read Japanese on his Twitter page. I can't read Japanese. Sorry, guys. But looks like that information was accurate. So good on you, whoever gave us that tidbit. Appreciate you. Senga's contract also comes with no trade protection and multiple opt-out clauses. No posting fee, etc. Curious to see, what the opt-outs end up being. Maybe that's the reason why he decided to take the $15 million per year, is that if he does come over to the States, pitches like a true ace at the top of the rotation, then maybe he hits free agency after next year, whenever those opt-outs end up being, and then hits the market really big next offseason. There are going to be a few really good starting pitchers on the market, but if Senga is able to prove himself in that market at the top of a rotation, he could be in for a very hefty payday next offseason if he has an opt-out after that year. But it sounds like there's multiple, according to Ken Rosenthal. In case you guys are wondering who the actual agent was for him, it was the Wasserman Agency, not Boris, actually. Appreciate you guys joining us. Again, if you have any questions about what's going to happen next for the Mets, what the Yankees should do to respond, what the Braves are going to do to respond, Phillies have added a number of pieces already this offseason. They still need to add to the back end of that bullpen. They still need to add another starting pitcher, in my mind, so we'll see where they end up going. But New York Mets are trying to run away with that division as best as they can, at least run away with it via payroll. I still think the Braves are going to be right there. They're built for success for a very long period of time. The Mets, meanwhile, are basically investing every single free dollar they can find next year. Next year's free agency class will be full of pitching. Yes, it will. The pitching market this year was very good at the very tip top. DeGrom, Verlander, Rodon, Senga, pieces like that. The middle tier was very thin. You're basically looking at Chris Bassett and not much else. Jamison Tyone, Nate Eovaldi, pieces like that. And then you get to the guys that are veterans, have had some success, and that's about it. But next year's free agent class should be more well-rounded. You should be able to get a good starting pitcher in next year's free agent class. Might not be as top-heavy as this one was, but there's still some really good options out there. Julio Urias is only, 27, 28 years old, and is going to be hitting the free agent market as a Dodger. I imagine he gets the qualifying offer. I imagine he ends up signing back with the Dodgers because his innings are invaluable right now for the Dodgers. But we'll see how things go. And, of course, you have Shohei Ohtani, the biggest free agent, of course, in Major League Baseball history. A year after, we had the biggest free agent up till now in Aaron Judge. Predicting it, Rodon signs tomorrow. Very possible. Per John Heyman, Yankees are preparing to make a huge offer to Rodon. That might get it done. If I'm the Yankees, I offer him 7 years at $200+ million, whether it's 205, 200, 210, 215, something like that. I think that's where the contract will ultimately end up for Carlos Rodon. If it's at that height, I think the Rangers aren't playing at it, but if the Yankees indeed balk at that type of number, maybe they circle back to it. I know that the Giants would be happy to have Rodon back. The Cubs, of course, need some starting rotation help, but haven't been connected to Rodon nearly as much as they have the shortstops on this market, with Carlos Correa and Dansby Swanson still out there. We haven't mentioned much about them today. There wasn't too much movement on their market either. At the beginning of the day, there was some rumors that the Yankees were trying to push for Carlos Correa and a package with Carlos Rodon. It seems like now they're focusing first on the starting pitcher. They, of course, could circle back to Correa, but sounds like they're trying to get that pitching done first, which is what I thought they should have done all offseason long. But if I'm a Yankee fan, I have to sign Rodon, or at least make a trade for a Rodon-level starting pitcher. Say I want to bring in Carlos Correa and I don't want to spend free agent dollars on both Correa and Rodon, then maybe I bring in Correa, trade for an ace-level starting pitcher. There's only a few guys out there on the market that could fit that bill. Corbin Burns, only making about $9 million, would save you about $20 million. That would be going towards the CBT tax. It would cost you a pretty penny as far as prospects, but hey, if you're bringing in Correa, maybe you have the prospects to go out there and shift him out. Devers will be a headline in next year's free agency. A lot of teams are going to be on him. Yes, he will. Machado's going to be out there as well. He's going to, I would imagine, opt out of his deal short of injury. I still think the Padres will likely re-sign him just because everything there is working for that organization as far as every big piece that they brought in seems to be hitting, with the exception of, say, like a Josh Bell. But Devers will be the king of the ball, if you will, next year. We put out a few videos for you guys today. If you guys want to check those out, we put one out about basketball a little bit. There's some rumors about a trade brewing between the Dallas Mavericks and the Detroit Pistons about Nerlens Noel. That would not be the first time that the Mavericks would have traded for him, but we should start to see some transactions in basketball here in the next 5 days. December 15th is when players who sign their contracts this offseason or this past offseason during free agency can now be traded after that December 15th headline. Machado said he wants to stay here. I would agree. Machado fits perfectly like a glove there in San Diego. You take Eovaldi and Bassett. I don't know if you need two starters, but I think you could easily get one of them. Since Correa and Rodon are Boras clients, I think the Yankees go for Rodon first, and then Correa asks them to sign him, so the Yanks bring in both. Let's go. Come on. That'll be a big move. Yes. One thing I will mention, the Texas Rangers last year, when they brought in Marcus Semien and Corey Seager anyway, they brought in both of those guys. The thing that made that happen, the way those contracts worked, is they were able to work with the same agent on both of those deals and get those deals to work in concert with each other. So maybe Boras is trying to do something like that with New York. If they do, that's roughly what, $60 million he's bringing in as far as salary. They're going to have to do something to offset some of that, maybe some trades out there. So kind of keep your eyes peeled on that New York Yankees situation over the next few days. Do you think the Astros make any moves? I think they're still going to add a left fielder. They could still add a bench or a backup catcher anyway, and they could still add some bullpen pieces. Outside of that, I don't really see them making any other additions. They, of course, could add for a center fielder like Ramon Laureano. He had a terrible year last year for the A's, had the PED suspension, so maybe something like that, a low-level, low-risk move. Might be something they try to do to improve their position out there in center field. If Ramon Laureano gets back to his career numbers, they could really have something. But I'm not expecting big transactions other than, say, a left fielder. And like I said, a backup catcher. Maybe somebody who could even play in front of Maldonado and a relief pitcher. Feel free to ask any questions you have about your favorite team. Got about 30 of you guys in here right now. Welcome in. Hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. Thank you very much for joining us late on a Saturday evening. In case you missed it, Kodai Senga agrees to go to the New York Mets on a 5-year, $75 million deal to become their number 3 starter in that rotation. There is a full no-trade clause on that deal and multiple opt-outs in that contract as well. So say he turns out to be a terrible pitcher here in the States. One issue that a lot of scouts have found with him so far is that he gives up a lot of contact. Major League front offices really like to see swing and miss type stuff from pitchers nowadays. So this will be a different attack. Different way of attacking hitters anyway. Maybe that'll work, especially with a couple of strikeout artists at the head of that rotation. Gives them a different look, a different type of starting pitcher than maybe they currently have. Do you think Major League Baseball should force a deadline for teams to sign free agents? No. I think they should be able to sign free agents year-round. Could Salvador Perez be a trade candidate for anyone? Absolutely not. Salvador Perez is staying in Kansas City. I know they have, what's the catcher's name? Melendez, I want to say, is the catcher of the future anyway for the Royals. I think they probably flex over Perez, probably 100 games anyway over the DH spot, maybe a bench bat, and a backup catcher probably in the neighborhood of 60 to 90 games he'll end up playing behind the plate. But Salvador Perez will not be on the trade market. He's going to retire a career Royal. The Mets turned Jacob deGrom, $85 million, into Justin Verlander, Senga, and Jose Quintana, $87 million. Well, again, that's a 5-year commitment for deGrom versus Verlander, which is a 2-year commitment, Senga a 5-year commitment, and Quintana a 2-year commitment. Welcome back, VJ. Melendez is a very good catcher for the Royals. I will say most of the dollars, anyway, for the Mets are in years 1 and 2. The only contract that goes of any length, should it go the full length of the deal, is Senga at $15 million. So again, they're not really worried about luxury tax or anything like that. So I get your point as far as the 185 to 187. It's only a $2 million difference in total value of the deal, but they're pushing all of that into a couple years, whereas the Rangers have spread it out a little bit. Two different ways of doing it. One's not right, one's not wrong. It's just that the Mets are willing to eat the cost of that being pushed all into the first 2 years of those deals. But hopefully y'all are having a good evening out there. We had another bit of news anyway. The Nationals signed Trevor Williams. The deal was officially announced. 2 years, $13 million. Good piece out of that Mets bullpen. Worked to a 3.17 ERA. Working between the rotation and bullpen. Nationals getting some good veteran arms in there to kind of shepherd their young guys. Both are horrible defensively, yeah. Salvador Perez I never really thought was a good defensive catcher. Just like Gary Sanchez to me is just a walking error behind the plate. For those of you who are wondering, he is the one guy I would never allow to catch for my team. Too many pass balls, too many throws into the outfield. He drops strike three calls regularly and doesn't get his pitcher the call. His framing isn't exactly great either. For those of you wondering, is Gary Sanchez a good bet to come in as a backup catcher? No! No, he is not. Welcome back, Mr. Padden. Welcome back, Mr. Wright. Who's the favorite to get Ohtani next year in free agency? It's obviously the Dodgers. They've kept their powder dry. They really haven't dipped their toe into any of these top options on the free agent market. They cut $100 million in payroll. I imagine they're trying to stay out of that first-year level tax for collective bargaining purposes anyway. That way they can go way above to be able to bring in Shohei Ohtani. That way they are not outbid by any team. And with next year's free agent class being very versatile. They have their own free agent in Julio Urias on the block as well. They could make some significant strides next year as far as payroll and be well over $200 million. But it sounds like the Dodgers are trying to do it differently this year, maybe some one-year type contracts. But it sounds like they want to stay underneath that tax level. Do you think Christian Walker would have been a better first baseman for the Astros instead of signing former White Sox first baseman? I think Jose Abreu is the perfect fit for your Astros. He fits exactly kind of what the Michael Brantley mold was when he first came over to the Astros. I think he's the next version of Michael Brantley. What do the Rangers need to do to round out their roster? Still need a left fielder. I've been kind of tinkering with it, I didn't expect to do a live video today, so I was kind of tinkering around when I was working today. I didn't have to work all day, thankfully, so I didn't have to work, open to close. Well, I did work open to close, but it's shorter hours anyway. But beside the point, I was kind of tinkering around with what the trade possibilities could be out there. The more and more I think about it, I really like the idea that I mentioned to you guys the other night about them bringing in a guy like Christian Yelich anyway, somebody who wouldn't have a lot of pressure on him at all in Texas. If they could get the Brewers to eat, say, $10 million of that a year for the remainder of his contract, saves the Brewers about $16 million in salary that they could use to sign their top free agents, and still gets them a productive left fielder, high on base guy, which is what the Rangers really want to have right now as far as a left fielder. He's not a horrible hitter. He's .257. The power is the one thing that's really gone away. He's also striking out a whole bunch. His walk rate is still pretty good, but that strikeout rate needs to come back down a little bit. I wonder, being in a different situation, a lot less pressure on him, maybe hitting in the number 6, 7 spot, and trying to get that swing fixed a little bit. But his on-base percentage is still top 20 in the game, even with as horrible as he's been offensively, considering his power. But that's the one spot I'd expect the Rangers to address first, is left field. As far as free agents that are on the market, there's nobody that excites me at all in the free agent market outside of Michael Brantley. He I consider more of a DH at this point, so I imagine they'd have Bubba Thompson and Michael Brantley split some time out there in left field and have Brantley play primarily at designated hitter, and then have Mitch Garver in there as the righty complement to that as well. They also are looking at closer. I'd imagine they could do a trade for a guy like Bednar for the Pirates or Hendricks from the White Sox. They have some money to play with that could make both of those situations work, and they have the prospects to make a trade. Is it too late for my Phillies to sign Correa, trade Stott for some pitching, move Turner over to second? Yes, it is. I think you're going to be very happy with Stott next year at second base. I think he's not going to be asked to do so much defensively. When he's not asked to do those kinds of things on the defensive end, where it takes out a lot of him, or a lot of it out of him, doesn't require the same range anyway at second base. But again, the shift is going away, so that will be increased as well, though. But I still think that Stott has a lot more offensive stuff to do than anything else, than what he's been able to show, at least, is what I'm trying to say. So for Phillies fans, I wouldn't necessarily try to sell, sell the idea of going after a Correa, but I just think Stott is a much better fit for your organization, and you still have other holes to fill. I agree Sanchez is the most lazy catcher in the whole league, and he's not even relevant right now. Exactly. Yet we're still seeing teams being connected with him. We saw the actual Houston. I want to say it was Willard. You brought up the Houston Astros were that you thought that he would be a good option for the Astros. But as far as teams actually being interested, I saw some news articles out there that the Twins might be bringing him back at some point because they still need a catcher out there. They're still not happy with their catching situation. If they can't find somebody to fill that spot, they could turn to him. There was some news articles out there that the Cardinals could end up looking at him as a backup to Wilson Contreras. But again, I just don't see him as a catcher. He's a DH at this point, and even then, he's not a good one. I just don't understand what everybody's infatuation is with Gary Sanchez. Jose wouldn't have ever happened. Very true. I just don't think they're going to spend at that level for a Correa type. They're going to spend for rotation help and bullpen, and that's about it the rest of the way. Just dreaming on the idea of Correa. Correa's your guy. Okay. I get you. Do you think if the Astros sign Brantley, if he's healthy, that then Houston gets a center fielder that is a legit powerhouse hitter plus a power hitter catcher that the Astros would have? I just think there's better options out there for the Astros. I think they need to stay athletic in the outfield. They already have a DH that's limited defensively when they have to put him out there. They don't really have any guys coming up in free agency over the next year or two. So you don't want to mess with your timeline long term and go out there and spend big gobs of money, or add somebody who's going to make those free agent decisions that you have coming up in say 24 and 25 even more difficult. But they could add a left fielder, but I'm looking more towards an athletic type that could go in there. I think Brantley needs to be a DH for the majority of his playing time. He is getting a lot older, or a lot longer in the tooth, and so I just don't think he's a great fit in left for the Astros. I think the bat is perfect, don't get me wrong, but only if you don't have Yordan Alvarez already taking that spot at DH. Really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to us. In case you guys are new here to the Upside, we cover the NBA, NFL, and NHL, and Major League Baseball. Gonna make a couple of videos for you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have a good football Sunday anyway. Gonna have dinner with the family tomorrow. Celebrate that I finally reached 1,000 subscribers. Get to see Grandma. Excited to see her again. So I doubt she's watching. She's probably asleep by now. But if you are, can't wait to see you, Grandma. That's what I meant. He would be DH. Well, again, you'd have Yordan Alvarez then playing in left field if you DH Brantley, and that's a defensive liability. I mean, just look at the San Francisco Giants as far as what they did for Carlos Rodon. Carlos Rodon was fantastic this past year, don't get me wrong. His ERA, 2.88, sounds really good, right? You know what it would have been if he had a good, or at least competent defense behind him? 2.2. That added 0.6 to his ERA for the year because he had an atrocious defense behind him. And the Astros are going to go with younger starting pitchers this year. They don't have a Verlander or a Cole at the top to take the heat off when pressure starts to mount on them. Valdez is a great pitcher, but you're asking him to step into that rotation, or step into that limelight of that rotation that was left, or the hole that's left anyway by Justin Verlander leaving. Big question marks there. Seeing that the Mets got Senga, Bassett might be a good option for the Rangers. I would agree as well. They could add another starting pitcher, but I think they're still going to try to add left field and closer first. But maybe if they see an opportunity with Bassett, I mean, the qualifying offer's there, etc. But they're not afraid to necessarily lose the draft pick if it's for an impact piece. Bassett would be that, would give them probably another number 2, 3 type starters. They've already got, 3 or 4 of those types right now. At this point, you'd be considering what, John Gray is your 5? Not a bad number 5 at all. Bassett probably slides in as your number 3. Heaney your number 4. But again, I would prefer a left fielder if I was the Rangers first and foremost. But the more and more I think about it, like I said, I'm really excited about the idea of trading for a guy like Christian Yelich, or maybe somebody else that's a left fielder. I mean, look at the Brewers situation. They brought in Jesse Winker. What position does he play normally? Left field. Now, sure, they traded Hunter Renfroe, so he could slide over easily to right. But just saying, maybe there's something you could, have a conversation with the Brewers. I'm sure they'd love to save the money on his contract at this point. He's only 30 years old. The biggest problem with him is his power numbers have dropped off and his K numbers have gone up. Outside of that, he's still just about as productive aside from a batting average standpoint. His batting average has dropped off about 30, 35 points from what his career averages have been. By the way, did you notice how the Braves were being cocky during the World Series, just like the National when they got lucky in that season? But even so, the Astros teams took them almost the distance. Well, I wouldn't say the Braves were cocky. I mean, they were basically the underdogs in every series they were in. So I don't know how cocky you can be when you're considered the underdog in a series. I mean, the Astros were the heavy favorite in that series, and the Braves just beat them. They just had the momentum. Just like in football, any team can get momentum, and once you get that ball rolling down a hill, it's really tough to stop that level of production, that level of confidence. And they won the World Series fair and square. I mean, the Astros are probably the team of the last 6 years, but the Braves were the team of that season. Nationals were the team of that season. Alrighty, guys. I think we're going to go ahead and call it for the evening. Just want to let you guys, New York Mets fans out there, know you got your guy. Your rotation seems to be pretty solid now. Still some options out there. Yankees are going to have to counter. I know they're not going to sit on their hands and just go into the season with the rotation as it is. They're expected to. I would expect to at least add one starting pitcher. In my estimation, they need to add at least 2, and maybe a long reliever who can give them a start here or there. But the Yankees have some work to do. Mets, however, have gotten their starting pitching shopping done. They could look to reliever, third base, and DH next. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new to us here. Welcome back, Anthony Manzano. Sorry. Who was the team of the 2010s for you? Overall, probably the Dodgers because they were winning the most, honestly, during that time frame. We didn't really have back-to-back World Series winners. Astros won the back half of the decade. Cubs were up there in the first half, along with, the middle, I should say. The Giants were up there in the beginning half of the decade. But overall, I'd say the Dodgers won the most. Regular season, they could have done better in the postseason, but there was no team that really separated themselves as far as postseason play. Early on in the beginning parts of the 2010s, anyway, I probably would have said the Giants, though. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate that, Jose. Thank you very much. You have a good night, VJ. Appreciate you guys joining us. Bottom line is the surgeries have never been back. Plus, you have to admit those teams weren't healthy. Plus, I kind of doubt they beat Houston healthy. Well, I mean, every team has injury issues. I mean, I know every newscast out there says you can't cry over spilled milk. You can't lament injuries in a season. Every team has to deal with them. That kind of thing. And yes, some injuries are more impactful than others, but the Braves won that World Series without their best player. So it's kind of hard to say that Houston would have beat them when healthy when Atlanta didn't have their best player on the field. They didn't have their best starting pitcher on the field either. They haven't had their best starting pitcher on in their rotation for about 2 years now. Mike Soroka, I believe, is the best pitcher in that staff, and he hasn't pitched in about 2 years. Let me clarify what I meant. Who won the most World Series championships? Giants. Alrighty, guys. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. If you guys just joined us late anyway, you guys can check out the beginning of the video, the breakdown of the signing anyway. 5 years, $75 million, multiple opt-outs within the deal. We haven't seen when those opt-outs are yet, but it sounds like there's going to be many of them. He signs a lower contract than what was out there as far as being reported. He had there was reports out there that he was getting offers of 3 years at 200, or excuse me, at 23 to 22 million dollars, somewhere in that range. He ends up taking an AAV of 15 million dollars. I think he gets the longevity he's looking for, gets the total dollars, and if he doesn't turn out to be a hit, he still gets the money. But if he does, he gets the option to opt out and really cash in. So good contract for Senga. Good contract for the Mets. They get the years and the player they were hoping for to round out that rotation. All in all, just great things all around for the Yankees. They have to bring in Rodon. I think that is the next move that we will see, big move anyway, that we will see on the free agent market. As far as the trade market, hopefully we finally get some trade news. It's been really slow over the past week for trades, but we'll see how things are going. Welcome in, Alex. Just saw you join us. NL teams are looking good this season. Yes, they are. This offseason. Yes, they are. But teams everywhere are trying to get those improvements done. Some teams are taking a couple steps back, recognizing this is not their year. Other teams are putting the pedal down and trying to get something done. But y'all have a great evening tonight. And as always, hit that subscribe button and the like button. Y'all have a great evening.